Здравствуйте, товарищи. More and more often I hear people using the term imperialism in the Western segment of the internet. Mostly people use this term rather intuitively, and actually they mostly right. However, it seems like they don't fully understand this term. So today we're gonna talk about imperialism. Imperialism was extensively studied in the end of 19th century and in the beginning of 20th century. John Atkinson Hobson was one of the first people who started to study imperialism as a historical phenomenon. He wrote several important works on that topic. Rudolf Hilferding also wrote a big study of economical anatomy of imperialism. His study of finance capital had a great impact on all subsequent studies. And of course, the most complete study of imperialism was made by Lenin. Of course, we will use Lenin's work, because it was based on studies of Hobson and Hilferding. And it's a most complete study. So first of all, stage of capitalism. As a mode of production, capitalism created a global production. Earlier modes couldn't do that. Even Roman Empire with its giant production. But industrial capitalism could do it and did do it. Remember Netherlands and the trade empire, colonial empire of Great Britain or France? This is it. So, by the end of 19th century, creation of global production has been finished, and the whole world has been turned into a global market. Of course, that market wasn't like a real material market, but it wasn't an abstract one either. It worked like an economic law. It exists today, and we can even see its material manifestations in global stock markets, global trade, production chains, and in multinational corporations. So one day global market stopped expanding because world is a ball, sphere. Earth just ran out of new places, and that historical moment moved whole capitalist system on a new stage of development, imperialism. And that development created monopolies. Yes, free competition capitalism developed into a monopoly capitalism. But there is something else in the core of imperialism. When some sphere of production turned into monopoly, it's not the worst part. The worst part is when production monopolies are unifying with banking monopoly, and capitalism ends up in creating a giant monopoly, which includes both production and banking. Circle is closed. Why is it so crucial? Well, because production needs bank capital to develop. Banks give business loans to expand production and personal loans to raise sales. So, before unification with bank capital, production capital is not complete. But once they merge, we get a self-sufficient system. More than that, that system becomes a core of national economy and stops political competition in any democracy forms. That kind of monopoly is called financial capital. But how does this unification happen? It may look like a conspiracy theory. Well, I'll try to explain it in simple words, but it doesn't mean it is always like this. Real life is much more rich than any theory, but you'll get the picture. So, no big company is owned by a single person, right? Companies always have multiple owners who holds company stocks. Several owners with the most company stocks have a right to pick board of directors, right? It works for banking, it works for production companies. And in some point, owners of production stocks acquire banking stocks. So production guys enter board of directors in banks, and bank guys enter board of directors in production companies. Of course, each of them is different. Each of them has their own economical interest. But if we will zoom out a little bit, then we will see a new social economical layer, which have a common economical interest. Members of that layer are not competitors anymore. They are one giant monopoly, finance capital, and their interest now becomes a national interest. But not all states on the planet are imperial, because only few states have banking capital. Banking capital needs a lot of free money. Where can you get them? Do everything what they call a normal, socially oriented business. Theft, drug trades, robbery, but on a national scale. Of course you can dip into slavery, because you don't pay slaves and all their labor goes to banks. And of course you only need time. And of course, countries which jumped on capitalism train first have an advantage over late ones. So banks accumulate and redirect free capital into spheres of production where it needed the most. And a lot of countries don't have that big banking capital. This is why there is no way to create a finance capital for some countries. No finance capital, no imperial state. And here we are, planet full of different countries, but only few of them have a finance capital. Only few of them are imperial. And non-imperial countries are inevitably fall into sphere of dominance of imperial country. So world becomes divided between imperial countries. And of course, that world can't exist constantly, because imperial countries are not allies, they are competitors. And in the moment of economical crisis, imperial countries fight for extension their economical dominance. First clash shows itself in trade wars, then it expands on currency, and finally real wars, where sphere of dominance is changed with power of weapon.
All right, Stacey, high level here, what just happened with Move 1?
China's invaded Taiwan. It began by attacking Taiwan's outlying islands near the mainland. Then it followed it with a large air and missile strike on Taiwan and on U.S. bases in Japan and on U.S. bases in Guam and the Northern Marianas. In response to that, the United States followed up with bomber attacks on on Chinese ships in port, and there was an air battle over Taiwan where American aircraft flying from the Philippines came in and engaged in combat with Chinese aircraft that were trying to bomb Taiwan.
So after Move 1, can you assess which team is winning?
I think it's a stalemate right now. China has strategically blundered by pulling Japan in, and the United States is still well positioned to defend, but China also has a lot of its assets left and has a lot of power that it can apply.
So this is a theoretical bone of imperialism. Of course, real life is more rich than any theory. But even so, you'll be able to understand USA economy and foreign politics. Anyway, that understanding of imperialism is crucial, because without it, you won't be able to understand such phenomenon as fascism. And fascism will be our next topic. Until next time, до свидания.